What's up, everybody? It's Steven and the wife, and we are Practical Family Projects, where we aim to help you tackle those indoor, outdoor, home DIY, and craft projects. Hey, if you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button, and any items that we used in our video today will be linked down in the description below. So, I think we're ready to get started on the project.
Wait,
What's up?
I have a joke. Tristan always gets to tell a joke. I have a joke.
Let's hear the joke.
Knock knock.
Who's there?
Toilet.
Toilet who?
Toilet me in would be so nice.
Maybe we leave the jokes to Tristan. Hey, let's get to the project. Alright, so in this video, we're building a new console table for the little one's bedroom at the lake house. So we've already built this console table. We stained it. We'll show that later. But just want to give a little information. All our connections, we're looking for a real rustic look out here. So all our connections are going to be exposed. Our screw holes are exposed. Our screws are exposed. We're not using pocket holes on this one. So if you want to, you definitely can modify it to make it work for you. We're actually going to put a shelf on the bottom. On this one, we did not put a shelf on the bottom on the previous one. So there's a lot of modifications or adjustments that you can do at home to make it work for your space. Like I said, everything's going to be exposed on ours, but you definitely could use a pocket hole or use some extra jigs to make hidden connections. All right, let's get started on this one. All right, so we have our material ready to go. We have all our dimensions ready to go. We're gonna start measuring and we're gonna start cutting. So let's have some fun. 28.5. So whenever we cut a line, there's gonna be a thickness to the saw blade. So when the saw blade comes down, if you just measure another 28 from there, you're actually going to cut off part of your 28.5 or your dimension. And then when you put it together, one leg is going to be just like a hair smaller than all the other legs, and you'll get the wobble. So we'll cut this, and then we'll measure again for our 28.5. That way all our boards are the exact same length. If you measure, if we didn't have this messed up in here, we would measure from the other side. So we just don't want to use this end right here.
Okay.
So that's
I
why.
thought you were wanting to not use this piece.
Oh, we could do
so
that.
I thought you would have wanted to go from there.
That could be the same thing. What we can do is we could chop off this and then measure down, because right, we have 28. Oh yeah, we have plenty. So we'll cut that rough end off right there, and then we'll measure down, and then we won't get into that knot right there.
How do you know when it's okay to use a damaged piece and when it's not okay to use a damaged piece?
It just depends on where it is on the table. So if I can turn it upside down and hide the damage on the bottom of the table, then that's fine with that. That works for us, but it just depends. We definitely don't want, a big hole in the top of the board on the top of the table. All right, so this is what we were talking about before with where your line is with respect to where you cut. So whenever we cut the saw, there's going to be a thickness that we cut off. And so we want to make sure that we're keeping all our cuts the same. So we want this total length here for us 28.5 inches. So that's our line. So we're going to cut right on the edge of the line, straight down the edge of this line right here. So that we get a full 28.5. And then the same thing on this side, we're going to cut right down the edge of this line, so we get a full 28.5 on this side. so we went ahead and we created or put together one side of the table with the legs right here. So the process for us, we're gonna put the legs together. So we'll build the identical piece that are gonna go on the other side of the console right here. So put the legs together with the cross pieces, and then we'll attach it with our cross members, the 2x3 cross members, and then we'll put the top 2x6s on, and then finally we'll finish up by finishing up the bottom and creating our shelf on the bottom. So let's walk through building the next set of legs and putting the other side of the table together. All right, so we have our 2x4s, these are our legs, and we have our 2x6 cross members that are going to be our supports, and they're going to create the top and they're going to create the shelf. So originally when we found this online, a picture of a similar table, I think they had two shelves, so maybe like one shelf here and one shelf here. For us, we're just modifying it so we only have one shelf. Obviously, if you're doing something at home and you want to have more than one shelf, definitely feel free to add a shelf. You definitely can make it longer, whatever fits your needs. Yeah, so this one has a stamp right here. All wood's gonna have a stamp or a knot, so make sure you're kind of turning it where you want it. We're gonna sand this down, that'll sand off, but just kind of pay careful attention. You can see this kind of a rough edge, so I'm gonna have this on the inside, not on the outside. The outside edge is a lot nicer. We'll sand this down a little bit, and it'll be a lot nicer. So this is where we said we're being pretty rustic. So we're just screwing right into the side with some wood screws. If you wanted to not have visible connections, then you could use a pocket hole on the inside. But for us, this is the look we're going for. So it's just going to be a little more rustic look on this one. So we're drawing a square line right now to make sure when we put that shelf in, it's not angled. We want to make sure we have a nice square line. Alright, so now that we got the legs put together, we're going to take a break and we're going to sand everything else down. So we're going to sand the legs down with the pieces that we put together. We're going to sand the top 2x6s down, and we'll sand the 2x3s down as well. So we're going to start with an 80 grit sandpaper. We'll get everything sanded down. That'll take off a lot of the rough stuff. And then we'll go back over with the 120 grit sandpaper. And when we hit it with that 120, that'll give us a nice smooth finish for what we're looking for. You definitely could keep taking it steps up with a higher grit sandpaper and get even a more consistent smooth finish. But for us, that seems to be working out nice. So hitting it with the 80 grit first and then the 120. For the 2x on the wood, sorry, the stamp. So we're gonna kind of work on this area right here, and we'll get that. We'll keep sanding on it and get that to come off. We're just gonna go nice and easy. If we start digging into it, we might create a divot. So we're just gonna go nice and easy and kind of start working on this to get that stamp off of there. Alright, so we got the majority of that stamp off, and when we hit it with that 120 grit sandpaper, it'll take it the rest of the way off. We're going to keep going, and we're going to get the rest of it sanded down, and then we'll be ready to start assembling. Alright, so we got everything sanded, and we're ready to start putting it together. So we built the legs first, like we said, then we're going to put the cross members on, and then we'll put the top, and then we'll finish up on the bottom shelf. So right now we're going to put the 2x3 cross member on. We're going to hold it in place, and we're going to screw it down here. We got a little help right here, so let's get after it.
You're checking to make sure they stay flush.
So a couple things to check here. Make sure everything's flush. Make sure everything's square. Yep, we're gonna do that one is after we screw this one down. We're gonna get this one screwed first, and then we'll screw that one down. And the reason we're doing that is so we can make sure we can adjust it to make sure we're flush on the top, we're flush here, and we'll be able to screw it down. All right, so now we'll put the bottom one on and then repeat the process on the other side. All right, so the drill got away from us, and that can happen to anybody, right? It can happen to anybody. And so what happened when the drill got away from us?
It broke the wood.
The screw went in too far, and it split the wood, right? So a couple ways to fix this, or a couple ways to do it. So we could go back and put a screw in right there, just not go as deep. That's one way to do it, because it's the bottom shelf. We could cut a new board. That's one way to do it, right? Just get a brand new board. And then the other way to do it would be we could flip it over like that, and see we have a good side here, and then on the back side, it doesn't look too bad, does it? And if we put our screw in there gently, and then we stain it, it's gonna kind of give it a rustic look. It kind of give it a little bit more of a rustic look to it, right? Won't it? Won't it?
Yeah.
And then if someone was painting it, they could put a little wood putty on there, sand it down, and you wouldn't even know.
Yeah.
Okay.
What about right here? What's slanted?
We're okay with that right now. We're okay with the way that looks. So that doesn't bother us. So, and we can make sure that this is the back, and then that way you don't have to look at it. All right? So not a big deal. We can fix it. So one thing, if you notice when Daddy puts his screws in, right? So watch. I'm going to do this one. So Daddy gets it started. All right? Let's make sure we're lined up. And then I just kind of go slow, you see? I'll just kind of go like that, right? And then, oh, it's moving on me. Did you see that? Moving on me. All right, let's hold it in place. And Daddy just goes slow.
And it moved from you.
There you go. It moved a little bit, but we'll fix it. All right? Did you see how we did that? So let's just go slow, and then we'll keep going there.
You do it.
All right? All right, so to eliminate the chances of the wood split and moving forward, I guess, we're going to drill some pilot holes. We were doing pretty good with the wood screws from having anything split, but I guess the 2x3s, they're just splitting right there on the edge. So to eliminate or to try to help mitigate some of that, we're gonna drill some pilot holes. So we just got a little drill bit. We're just gonna drill some pilot holes right where our screws are gonna go. All right, so before we start attaching these, let's go over a couple of things. So one question is, which side of the board do we use? Do we use this side of the board, or do we use this side of the board? So realistically, at the end of the day, it's just really up to you guys. For example, if you're staining this board, I mean, this one's got some nice knots in here. You put a little bit of stain on there, man, that probably turns out and looks pretty good. Looks really good. It's gonna look real grainy. But if you're not going for that, then maybe you want to use the other side. So this side, you know, still got a couple of knots, but not as bad. This side looks good too, right? This side's not too bad. If you're painting it, it really doesn't matter. Maybe you look at the side that's smoother, so that you don't have to fill in with wood putty and sand it down even more. I've just been informed that we're painting this. I keep saying that we're going to stain it, but I guess we're painting it now. The wife and the daughter decided we should paint it. So for us, we're just looking for a nice smooth side that we will be able to clean up and paint. So it's really up to you. One thing to note though, like for example, this piece right here, it has a knot and it's got a little bit of an edge right there. And so we don't want that one on top. We could sand it down probably, but we don't want that on top. So this one for sure, we're going to use this side. This side's nice and smooth all the way down. It has a nice smooth edge. That way, if someone runs their hand over the top of the table, they're not going to accidentally cut themselves. So at the end of the day, it's really up to you guys what you want and how you're finishing it. And that'll kind of decide if you want to or if you need to use one side or the other when you're connecting the boards. All right, so we got all the boards cut, we got them all sanded. Now we're ready to start screwing them down. So what we did is we found the center of this. So this board is, this overall table is 15 3/8 wide here. So half of 15 3/8 would be 7.5 plus 3/16. So 7 and 9, 10, 11 16. So 7, 11 16. So that's the center of the table. And so we marked it on this end and we marked it on the other end. And then a 2x6, if you measure a 2x6, a 2x6 is 5.5 inches. So we want the center of the 2x6, oh sorry, we're going to use this side. We want the center of the 2x6 to be on that mark. So I want to mark the outside edge of the 2x6 so I can keep it in line. So half of a 2x6, if you take half of 5.5, that'd be 2 1/4. So if we measure from here to there, we got 2 1/4 right there. So we did that on this side and we did it on the other side. And what that's going to do is when we set this 2x6, it's going to give us a line so that we can make sure we're square and we can make sure that we're straight all the way across. And what we'll do is we'll get it lined up here and we'll get it lined up on the other side. There you go. Wife got it lined up over there. You might have to kind of work together. We'll get it lined up and then we'll be able to screw it down in place. The next thing that we'll need to do before we screw it down is double check how much overhang we have. So the overall length of this is 51 3/4. The boards are 54 inches. So that's going to leave us 1 1/8 inches. So what we'll do is we'll measure both sides. So we should have 1 1/8 inches on this side and 1 1/8 inches on that side. So that way we make sure our overhang is the same, 1 1/8 inches. And if you're more than welcome to make these boards longer. You could put a 2-inch overhang, a 3-inch overhang if you wanted to, but for us the 1 1/8 inches seems to be working out really nicely. Okay, I have to admit something. I'm totally wrong. So I said 2 1/4, but then we started laying out the board, and the wife kindly reminded me that half of 5.5 is 2 3/4. So we'll measure over 2 3/4, and we'll make our mark. So I'm going to set this 1, 2 3/4. So we should have from there to the center 2 3/4. So from the center over 2 3/4, we'll draw a straight line. So that's going to be the edge of our board right there. Now we can attach this. We're ready to attach, and the wife brought up a good point. She said, rather than screwing from the top, could we screw from the bottom since they did decide to paint it, and then we don't have to worry about putty in these holes? And that's definitely an option. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take the clamp this down, and then we're just going to reach up from underneath, and we're just going to run a screw through the bottom. Alright, so you saw the wife just now. We have a little bit of a gap here. The boards have a bow in it. So what we're going to do, we're going to screw this side down, and then we'll take a clamp and clamp this together, and then screw it down from the bottom, and it should hold it in place. Plan for the shelf. So instead of doing one solid shelf, we're gonna kind of make this because this is just gonna be like a console table in the little one's room at the lake house. So we cut these 2x6s, 12.5 inches to match these, and then we're just gonna keep them spaced out so it'll give it a nice shelf that looks like this that you could set a suitcase on or put some clothes on or whatever you want to do, whatever we end up doing with it. And so what we did is we took this overall length. We subtracted each of these 5.5 inches, and then we divided that, so that was 8, and then we divided that by each of these openings, so there's 7 openings, so that's 1 1/8 inches. So you can see over here we have the 1 1/8 inches marked right there, and we have it marked on this side as well. So now we're just gonna slide these in place. We'll tap them down in place, and then we'll be able to just put a couple of screws on from the outside, and then it'll be ready to go. Guys, you notice there's a couple of them we re-drilled the holes just because when we put that screw in, the board lifted up on us. We weren't holding it tight enough, and so we just drilled a new hole, reset it, and go. We'll sand those down. Because we're gonna paint it, we'll just put a little wood putty over these, and that'll kind of close that up. So we'll hit it with the sandpaper, put a little wood putty, and then we'll be ready to go.
Let's go.
We got a table. All right, we got a table. We finished the console table. Thanks for coming along. It turned out pretty good. We had some bumps and bruises along the way, but we learned, we fixed, we were able to adjust. We got the solid boards on top. We had the shelf down on the bottom with the space boards down there. It turned out fantastic. Couldn't be happier with this project. So thanks for coming along with the ride with us. We really enjoyed it. It was a good video. It was a good project, right? It was a good project. We really appreciate you coming along. Feel free to comment down in the section below. Hit the like button if you really enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the ding so that you get notifications of our future videos. Guys, check out our next video, and then we look forward to seeing you on our next project. Appreciate it. Thanks.